Away.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you so much. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. My name is Nikoleta. I'm an alcoholic. I'm getting all kinds of emotions. I'm getting hit here, just being in Glenn's presence, who I consider one of the mentors and influences in my recovery journey. Celebrating an anniversary in this month on September 15th. I was given the gift of 17 years of sobriety, which is mind blowing. Yesterday, I was reading the big book with a woman that has 34 years sober, that knows the big book in and out, and asks me to have an experience with the book with me. And I'm sitting at her dining room table, and we're reading Bill's story. I'm reading Bill's story, and this sentence strikes me that it gets more wonderful as time passes. And like I've read that sentence a million times, but for some reason, I read it yesterday that this sobriety gets better and more wonderful as time passes. And that's been my experience. And it's an experience that I'm so grateful that I don't take for granted. I'm still amazed and I'm still in awe because there is this part of me that is very clear that as an alcoholic, I'm in a lot of trouble. And this thing that I suffer from is always present. It's always present. And it's clever and it's patient. And when I'm under the possession of it, I have no choice. I have no choice after I pick up a drink. My experience abundantly confirms this and it shows this. But what really scares me is that I have no choice whether I'll pick up a drink before I pick up a drink. And when that's realized with every fiber of our being, then doing the things that Alcoholics Anonymous asks us to do and have an experience with is welcomed. That was welcomed. I was willing to pray to a God I didn't believe in. I was really willing to write inventory, even though I didn't want to look at myself. I was willing to believe that I could possibly maybe have a relationship with this power that was personal to me. I was willing to step into the unknown. I was willing to make amends, even though I was petrified and didn't really have courage on my own power to do things like that. I was willing to be of service, even though I would rather watch Netflix. You know what I mean? It still happens, but I show up, like I'm willing to speak in front of Glenn, even though I'm petrified while I'm at work at noon, even though I'm like petrified of public speaking and still feel insecure because I want to serve from that place and I want to serve that place that's entered my heart and uh, a miracle has happened. And so, my story is not that extraordinary. I'm just another bozo on the bus. This is not a New Jersey accent, but I am an American through and through. And I've been in this country for 30 years. I'm 44 years old. I was born and raised in Belgrade, Serbia. I would say it's an alcoholic country. Those Slavs and the Balkans, I mean, they're wild out there, let me tell you. They like to drink and you can't be trusted if you don't drink. And, like that's how they put the babies to sleep, or they don't coddle them. They like give them a little bit of brandy to calm down. But, regardless of that, I was raised in a broken family. It was a broken family. I have divorced parents. Actually, my mom and dad married and divorced twice. My sister's from the first marriage. I'm from the second. I find that funny, so I like to say it because it's pretty unique. Um, and um, and dad was an alcoholic. Dad was one of us. I didn't know that. I was warned about alcoholism. I was warned about alcoholism even from his mom, who died with a bottle in her hand when she was only 50. And, I don't remember much of childhood. I do remember wanting to be in anybody else's story than my own. I was addicted to reading books and watching movies, and I would get lost. I would be reading a book on a bus, and I would like get so wrapped up in that story that I would miss my stop and end up at the last stop and then I would have to like beg, cry like a little girl that I was, and get somebody, some stranger, to get me back home, which just shows that there was already this sense of like not feeling connected to my own family, not feeling a part of, not feeling like I belong, not knowing how to express myself. Life was just such a mystery. It seemed so overwhelmingly huge to bear it all, and and then there was the addiction to thinking, being in my own head, in the virtual reality of my mind, with my narrative about what I'm seeing and how life is and how they were. And then there was an addiction to sugar, which I tried stealing when I was a kid. 3 times, failed completely. I'm a horrible thief. We could never rob a bank together. We will get caught, I promise you. After the third time, I got caught stealing at a grocery store when I was like 10, 11 years old. I was like, this life is not for me. Thievery just was not my calling, but I tried. And then when I was 14, my mom and my sister and I came to New York City. We came to United States. We came initially to only visit, and ended up deciding to stay through tons of circumstances. We decided to stay, but um, um, within 2 weeks of arriving, we were homeless in New York City, illegal immigrants, 3 females, not speaking English. I share this with you only because I think that the experiences in our lives build certain ideas, old ideas that the book talks about, that needs to be reevaluated, and has very much everything to do with how I perceive myself and the world around me, and how I've been shaped. And, I'm so lucky. Yesterday, I read Bill's story, and I can relate to Bill's wanting to achieve, wanting to push himself, wanting to make money on the stock market, wanting to take risks. They can make millions. Why can't I? He feels like he has arrived. And I think that I had some of that drive in me as well. And I didn't think I would ever end up like my dad. I watched my dad in my childhood. I had an effect watching my dad have an effect with booze. I was curious about booze watching him drink, because I would see that he would be just more tolerant and more patient and more willing to read me a story, and just more even and at ease when he drank, or when he had a few in him. And when mom didn't let him drink, he would be tense, and he would be tight, and he would be annoyed and frustrated and restless. And I love how the book talks about that, because my dad was the first example of the restlessness, irritability, and discontent, which we suffer from. We experience that, and that goes away at once when we take a few drinks. It goes away at once. And I watched that in my dad. And I remember it left an impression on me. And I remember thinking, the relationship with the bottle seems to be so much more important to him than the relationship with his children. So that left a great amount of curiosity in me about booze. It really left like a question mark about what was so important. And so, what was so important to him about it, and what did it do for him? Um, so we are in New York City. We're homeless, and 3, 4 jobs, and hustling and struggling and pursuing the American dream. And there was periods of living in abandoned buildings in Manhattan, and there was a period of squatting with some strangers in the village, and then like getting our own little studio apartment in the city that the three of us like worked 3, 4 jobs to afford. And during this time, I'm in high school, and I graduated high school within 2 years of valedictorian. And everybody tells me that I'm smart, and they give me all kinds of diplomas, and they publish my poems, and they like want to accept me to 30 universities and all of these things. And all of this leaves an impression on me that I can get through anything if I put my mind to it. I can get through anything if I apply myself. That if I put my big girl pants on, I can plow through challenges of life. It also leaves an experience of bitterness and resentment and anger with life, because life did not present to me as a safe place. It didn't present to me as a safe place, and it didn't present to me as a friendly place. And I really couldn't trust what was going to happen. So that created a lot of fear and a lot of trepidation, which in turn creates a lot of need for security and a need for safety. And who am I going to rely on but on myself to manage and control every move and what's going to happen and what can I have and what can I not have. And this very much plays a part in what this recovery deal is about and what it has been. This is the kind of depth and weight that we need to be like more than inwardly reorganized, to be really changed and shifted. And all of these ideas about how I perceived life really stood in the way of me having an open heart or being true to the depth of my being, you know? I mean, the reading this morning was, or this afternoon was, seek to it that your relationship with him is right. And to me today, that means also seek to it that your relationship with the depth of your being is right, that your relationship with truth is honest and right. And great events will come to pass from that baseline. But I didn't have a right relationship with life or with myself. I didn't even know who I was and what I was. I felt no sense of connection and no sense of depth. I heavily relied on my mind to tell me what to do and how to live life. And I pursued life with vigor. I pursued success. I pursued external accomplishments. When I was 16, my mom and my sister moved away. I was older than I was. I appeared wiser than I was. I was more capable than most 16-year-olds would be. And I was supporting myself from the age of 16 in Manhattan, living alone. And by the time I was like 19, I was making six figures. Like Bill, I had arrived. I identify with how Bill thought and how he felt. Forget how he drank. I identify with how he saw life, how he saw himself as a player in life. I think this is the stuff we evaluate in inventories. This is the stuff that needs changing, right? My relationship with life, because the whole thing is really about relationships and my standing in it, my place in it. And so at 16, I was working in one of the jobs I had. I was working in a restaurant, and I got my hands on a bottle of gin. I was like, I'm taking this puppy home. It's coming with me. I'm finally going to understand why dad loved this so much. I was curious. I was attracted to it. I had that question mark my whole life. I was on my own. There was no one over me. No one can take it from me. I brought this bottle of gin home at 16 years of age. I drank from the bottle. It was love at first gulp. I don't remember the rest of the evening. I don't know if I had a physical craving and an allergic reaction to alcohol immediately, but boy, did I love it. And I wanted to do it again. And I drank fast and I enjoyed it. And what has happened? I could breathe. I remember that. I remember I could breathe. It's almost like that bottle was the solution to how I already felt inside. It gave me ease and comfort. From what? From myself, from my ideas and from my thoughts about life and about myself, from the fear and always being on eggshells every single day, trying to manage and play a chess game with life, trying to, from waking up even with this sense of like life can't be trusted, like impending doom, right? Something's bad's gonna go. What more can I do to maneuver some moves? And I just loved it. I loved it. I was young. I wanted to do that again. Over the ensuing 11 years, I drank. I had a relationship with this most toxic lover I ever had in my life that became a primary relationship in my life. It was like a train wreck I couldn't look away from. I just kept going back. And I even when I didn't understand why I kept going back, I kept going back because that's the baffling feature of alcoholism. But in the first few years, there was a lot of fun. I was young. I was full of life. I had successes. I had achievements. And my drinking didn't catch up to my thinking yet. I like how Bill says that. And he says it a few times in the book. And of course, like I'm like 17 years sober the first time I noticed these things. Go figure. The book that keeps on giving. The book that keeps on giving. Like my drinking didn't catch up to my thinking yet, but like I felt that I was in control, and that's what booze did for me. It made me feel like I can do anything, and it really I love my sponsor said it one time many years ago, and I've been using it ever since. The wheels of my mind stopped spinning. I remember the first time I heard her say that, I teared up. I was at peace. Alcohol did for me something that really I like yearned for always. I didn't even know I did. And how do you stop that when it does that for you? It's not just booze. It's so much more than booze. It's like a license to live, to meet life, to meet life. Life which seems scary and unsafe and painful and hard and bitter and resentful that I'm afraid to participate in because I don't know how. Because I am so disconnected from the depth of my being that I don't even know that I have. Because I'm so wrapped up in the stories in my head of the things that have happened to me and the people that have gone through my life that I disagree with, because I'm in constant argument with certain things. And I need reprieve from those arguments. I need reprieve from that perception. And then you give me a bottle, you give me booze. And for some reason, me and booze have this dance. And this dance, like I can't stop dancing. And, first few years was manageable. A few instances and a few consequences here and there and a few oopsie, and the progressive nature of the illness is that it just gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse and it's repeated over and over and over and over and over again. And I have a mind that keeps telling me that next time I'll know better. Tomorrow I'll try harder. I have a mind that keeps changing my mind and excuses why I needed to get loaded like that. That embarrassment last night was just a one-time deal. That brownout that I can't remember half of is just a coincidence. That it's somebody else's fault that I was in that position. And I never taken ownership of my life and my feelings and my thoughts, nor do I have this insight that I could question myself. I never thought I could question my mind. I mean, they don't teach us this in elementary school. I want to change the curriculum in public schools, seriously. That, our mind can be like challenged. Our thoughts and stories and ideas about ourselves and others, we can have a little question mark there. AA has taught me that. AA has taught me to sit and internalize and reflect and ponder and be with an open question on certain ideas about myself and life, right? And to really ask for the truth and to really want the truth with no agenda. And for whatever reason, it seems to be a lighter way to travel through life. It's just like, let's talk about the symptoms of living like that. Um, Fast forward 11 years later, I've lost my job. I got a warning letter because I was sending messengers out to get me airplane bottles. I didn't understand the phenomenon of craving, and I would have a liquid lunch at work, and I would get thirsty, and I would want more, and I just didn't understand that. It was a baffling feature of alcoholism for me. I either thought about drinking or couldn't stop drinking when I drank, and I came to a point of just always needing to be passed out or passing out and not really getting clarity on whether it's 4 in the afternoon or 4 in the morning, and all of those things that come with being in a relationship with alcohol. And any alcoholic knows what I'm talking about. Friends have gone away. I was less and less approachable. I was absolutely unavailable. I was not really present for any relationships. I couldn't show up as a sister or a daughter. I hid my drinking from others, even though I lived alone, because they wouldn't understand. I drank in my therapist's office while I gave him top dollar and lied to him about my alcohol consumption and blamed the rest of my life on why I'm so unhappy and nothing seems to go my way and life seems to be unmanageable with problems piling up on me and becoming astonishingly difficult to resolve. And there's always somebody else to blame. And I wasn't taking really ownership for any kind of change. And I tried some AA meetings in New York City, but I was the girl under the influence with whiskey in my Snapple bottle. That was me. I was the girl. And I always like with warm heart see the person that walks into AA under the influence. I mean, could anything be a greater cry for help? There's nothing more of a greater cry for help than a active alcoholic sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Talk about powerless. And in that last 6 months of my drinking, I experienced a couple of alcoholic seizures publicly on the streets of New York City. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was, it was that, demoralization that the book talks about. My roommates were the hideous four horsemen of loneliness, terror, bewilderment, despair. I couldn't leave the floor. I couldn't open the door. I couldn't get the mail. I couldn't open the mail. I couldn't, pay the bills. Things started getting shut off. It's just misery, depth of misery that only an alcoholic understands, depth of loneliness that only an alcoholic understands. I felt that I tried everything to control and manage my drinking. I felt I tried everything to find a way out of this problem. And on September 14, 2006, under the influence of alcohol, I bought my last drink with 99 pennies that had scrounged up around the house. The bodega guy looked at me like I was a bum. I always looked at them like they were bums. Something got downloaded in that moment, right? The message gets transferred with our being. Sometimes the message we need gets transferred somewhere from the neck down. I didn't have words for any of this, guys. For the first few years of my recovery, I had the experience, but I didn't have the words because I had no reference point. I had no reference point, nor did I have clarity or an awakening that's possible and available as a result of being in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I bought this Colt and it just wasn't enough. And then I convinced my neighbor to give me a drink, and that wasn't enough. And I sat on the floor of my apartment, having tried everything to manage my drinking, having had the experiences of everyone leaving, having had the experience of being so confused and lonely and depressed and ashamed and full of regret and just like inability to stop drinking. And there was only one thing I didn't try: to end my life. And that's the best my mind comes up with. That is my last house on the block for me, living in self-reliance. Living in self-reliance. The last house on the block is suicide, to make the supreme sacrifice. Because in my world, I don't live in a world of possibility. I don't live in the world of miracles. AA is pregnant with possibility. It's asking us to step into the unknown and to be willing to believe that we can have a personal relationship with God of its understanding or our misunderstanding or whatever you want to call it, even if you don't believe in it now. But when your life is on the line, when there's no place to go except death, how willing are we? Incredibly, with the desperation of a drowning man, because something in me wants to live more than it wants to die. And let me tell you, on September 14, 2006, the power of truth and the power of God goes so deep because I was under the influence of alcohol when I had a moment of awakening. I was under the influence of alcohol. That's the power of truth. And what was the truth? I can't stop drinking. My step one experience downloaded to every cell in my being. It was no more intellectual. It wasn't what the therapist said. It wasn't because that ex-boyfriend said it. It wasn't because my sister pointed out. It wasn't because my mom reminded me I have an alcoholic gene and I'm just like my dad and that side of the family. It wasn't any of that. I didn't say it because AA asked me to say it in order to take a seat up in Alcoholics Anonymous, because you were the last place I wanted to be and sit at and be a member of. I mean, we don't open up an AA brochure and be like, wow, I'm going to go check this out. This is fun. who does that? You know, I finally had that moment like I can't stop drinking, period. Not I have someone to blame for it. It's my life and I'm doing it, doing what I want because I couldn't even justify the amount of pain. The amount of pain was so evident. Everything was taken away that stood in the way of me seeing this. The job, the relationship, the friends, the good looks, the hygiene, like it just like more and more was in my face. Like I couldn't look away. I couldn't look away and not acknowledge, you know? And September 14, 2006, there was a manipulated pause, time stopped. Uh, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and I've never experienced anything like that since then. I don't know what happened. It wasn't of my doing. It wasn't a conclusion I came to. It was somewhere in that split second just before I seriously thought of taking my life, and I had the plan and the intent and half the means. There was also something in me that wanted to live more than wanted to die. And there was also within those few minutes just prior to that a most sincere prayer I have ever said in my whole entire life, which was, I can't do this anymore. And in the combination, in that jambalaya of all those ingredients, something magical happened. And I have been serving that manipulated pause for 17 years. That moment was so powerful to move me all the way until now. I didn't have the words for it. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know it was God. All I knew is that I couldn't do this anymore. I was defeated. I have met my master. Alcohol, I have met my match. Alcohol was my master, like Bill says. I relate to that. I relate to Bill's step one experience when he says, no words can tell, because it was wordless. It was wordless. Today, I say that was God. I didn't even use those words for years. I had no reference point. And I think there was a part of me that didn't think that I deserve it, earn it, or could have an experience like that. But that split second removed the mental obsession from this 27-year-old alcoholic back then who couldn't draw a sober breath on a daily basis. I haven't had the mental obsession return for 17 years. Can you tell that I'm grateful? I'm so grateful. Because I have no idea if it's going to be like this for the rest of my life. That's the truth. That's what makes me grateful. I don't take it for granted. It was a gift. It was a gift. I borrowed a quarter from my neighbor and went on a New York City payphone. And I called my sister until she picked up the phone, making sure I don't lose that quarter. And I said, please get me out of here. I can't do this anymore. And she picked me up, and the red carpet of Alcoholics Anonymous stretched out in front of me, and it keeps stretching out in front of me. Let me tell you, I am the luckiest girl in AA. Sorry. That's how I feel. All right. And I stand by it. That surrender, that element, we call it moment of clarity or grace, an undeserved gift. That surrender opened me up in a way where even though I had my own likes and preferences and dislikes and ideas and opinions and thoughts about things, I just kept taking the step forward of whatever was in front of me. For some reason, I trusted whatever was in front of me, and I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my mind. I just knew not to trust me. and my ideas of what I'm seeing and what I think about it. And I was given the willingness, and willingness is a byproduct, I think, of step one experience. I was given the willingness to take radical action or to be willing to take action that was laid out in front of me, even though I didn't like it, I didn't agree with it, and I didn't understand it. You know, went to treatment, and they said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I don't want to die." And they handed me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and told me to read the first 164 pages. I heard 64 pages. So I'm in detox, day 5, sober 5 days, detox, reading. And I'm on page 64 going, "They want me to know something on page 64." Meanwhile, the book is like Japanese to me. I don't understand anything this book is saying. Catapulted into the fourth dimension of existence. What the hell is he talking about? Nobody lives like this. No clue what they're talking about. These are fictional characters, nice examples, but I could relate to how Bill drank. I could relate enough to know that there was something there. And I had that willingness that's born out of that desperation of a drowning person to do what I was told. And I didn't trust myself enough that I didn't want to leave treatment. So I made myself get locked down in a setting for 4 months because I know if I'm locked down, I won't drink. Because you see, even the mental obsession was removed, but I still thought I could drink. I still thought I will drink. That's step one. That's a step one. Step one is I will drink. I'll drink even though I don't want to drink. I'll drink even though I have every reason not to drink, even though I have cirrhosis of the liver, I'm losing my children, probation's going to test me tomorrow. I'm going to drink. I'm going to drink no matter what. And so I wouldn't leave a lockdown place, even though I had no mental obsession, because I knew this thing got me and it was my master. It's funny, we admit powerlessness and hopelessness, and we're empowered and given hope. Everything is like upside down in the world of spirituality, which is the only world, by the way. It's just that I was living in a virtual world of my mind. This thing, spirituality, we call it a spiritual program of what we do here. It's it's truthful, honest, real, simple life. It's actually like an aligned way to be. It was that I created a life that's not correct. And I lived a life that's not aligned with the truth of life. And that's why I was in so much pain. And who wouldn't want and need relief from that? And here's another reason I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I have the best sponsor in the world. I mean, the best sponsor in the world. I'm saying it out loud. I will place billboards everywhere about it. Her name is Lena. And the moment I became a free range alcoholic, and I was like, the 4 months of being locked down in treatment in the mountains of Pennsylvania, they were like, you gotta go. You gotta go. It's time. And so they put me in a sober house in New Jersey, in North Jersey, and I'm still here. I'm still in the sober house in North Jersey, by the way, 17 years later. But the day I came out, literally the next day, I met these two people, Barefoot Bill and Lena, and they became my mentors, and she became my sponsor. And they made me fall in love and get so curious and become a seeker in Alcoholics Anonymous. Two things happened. I had great teachers that were given to me. A week later, like Peter M. was doing a workshop here with Chris Schroeder, with Chris S. I'm sorry, I said the last name. Well, he says it all the time too. But like I was like exposed to these like solution focused meetings, and people that loved the book, and people who did the 12 steps, and people who prayed and meditated, and people who wanted to do a fourth step workshops, and people who like carried the big book around that was falling apart, and they did 12 step studies. And I got curious and I got curious and I was hungry. I was hungry for truth. And I was given this mentor, and she had freedom in her eyes. She had humility and confidence in her. She was a man that knew the answer. She was a woman that had the answers. She had a confidence in humility. It was safe to be in her presence. I felt safe enough to tell the truth and to open up. And one of the first pointers she gave me is sit 2 minutes Sit for 2 minutes and don't do anything. Can you now tell somebody with 4 months sober, a real alcoholic, to sit for 2 minutes and not move? If they tell you they sat for 2 minutes and had no thoughts, they're absolutely lying, 100%. Okay? Because at 30 seconds, I was cheating. I was peeking out and looking at my clock. I couldn't sit with myself. I was like, why am I doing this? The mind had all kinds of ideas and thoughts about it and commentary about it. And then he was like blaming me for failing. I can't even sit for 2 minutes. I'm a bad sponsee. But thankfully, I had enough willingness to be honest with her and tell her that I failed. And she said that's what the experiment was about, for you to see that first. For you to see that first. Because she wanted me to connect to the depth of my being, and she wanted me to start giving attention and intention to the neck down, and to teach me how to be in the present moment and to be here now and to build a relationship with this moment. And of course, all of that started making more sense as I did inventory, which revealed to me all of my arguments with life and all of the roles that I played as a result of how I saw life. You know, when you think that life is not safe and that it's not friendly, and you have bitterness and resentment with the cards you've been dealt with, you tend to be a victim or a martyr of that. And you tend to really not, or I tended to not really come into any relationship with deep honesty, being genuine, being sincere. This is what AA teaches us. It brings us back home. AA brought me back home to some like sincerity and innocence and experience of the heart. And it was a heart opening experience that makes me feel like I can stand on my own 2 feet and be in awe and amazement like a child of whatever is happening in front of me, and feel that the heart is big enough to bear it all, because my God is big enough to bear it all. Because my God can penetrate me, and the truth can penetrate me when I'm under the influence of alcohol, about to commit suicide. It can work in any area of my life. If he can take away this mental obsession, then, and he can open my heart, and he can transform me, and this change can come over me. Can you imagine what it can do when we turn our attention to that, and when we want to serve that because we see it as a gift, and when we want to serve from that? And the book talks so clearly about that, you know, our will and God's will aligns. My will and God's will aligns. Wow. Wow. There's no like homework to be done and check mark. I'm being a good girl. I'm being a good girl. I'm listening to God. It's like natural. It's like I'm not in pain when I'm not an asshole. Excuse me if that's a curse. And when I'm an asshole, I tend to be in pain, whether you're an alcoholic or not. My body is more in tune with the truth, which is why I need to be able to sit with myself and do nothing and be. And I need to be willing to take a look at what motivates some of the ways that I move in life. And when I look at it and I see fear is the driving factor, and what's in it for me, and selfishness and self-centeredness, then I hit some brick walls of life and I end up in pain anyway. So maybe that's a failed system. Maybe there's a system that gets me drunk and that needs relief. How can I live in this life and be a part of this life without needing to get loaded, without needing to numb, without needing to, how can I be open? How can I be like a child again? I mean, I wanted to run a meeting once in a sober house that I work at, with a baby, holding a baby. And the baby is not like, oh my God, you're gonna drop me. Who are you? You're a stranger. Why are you holding me? Like the baby has not, it's just like open. It's just like trusting. That means that my natural way to be in life is trust. Actually, coming back home is coming home to faith. Coming back home is trusting life. Coming back home is allowing whatever comes in my experience to come. And because I'm limited in my perceptions, I can't always see the bigger picture. But what I thought was the worst thing that possibly happened in my life ended up being the greatest thing in my life. Who would have thought that losing everything and going through so much pain and being on brink of suicide was the necessary ingredient for me to have experienced the freedom that I experience today? Did that girl think that? No, that girl thought about, I lost everything. I ruined everything. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how I'm going to get that back. She had no idea. Just like I had no idea that that working the steps, nor what I suffered from has nothing to do with drinking. That drinking is the last thing I do. The last thing I do is drink. The last thing I do is drink. That when I'm not living in faith and when I'm not living in trust, that fear is running the show, and it's very much centered in the mind, and it's very much mental anxiety about what I think I should have and what I don't want to lose, and I want to control and manage life, and that thing, mind, will not give up control. And I really do think that the whole thing is about when I want to be in control, which I don't have. So it's pretty frustrating, guys. You know, I'm sure you guys relate. We all want to do it. But I don't even know what tomorrow brings. I don't even know what tomorrow brings. She wanted me to sit for 2 minutes in silence, or I think she wanted me to sit. One of the reasons my sponsor wanted me to sit for 2 minutes silence to see that I'm not even in control of my thought. I don't even know the next thought that's going to go through my head. I have no idea. And I don't know if that thought is going to lead me down a rabbit hole that might lead me to a drink. This is why the book talks about suddenly. Suddenly the thought, suddenly the thought, I mean, the thought overrode the guy's whiskey in the milk. Well, it's in the milk. I mean, come on. That's the same thinking that tells Bill that even though he needs a tumbler full of gin and a couple of bottles of beer at least in order to eat any breakfast, the very next thought says, nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. I thought I was in control of life. I thought that I could beat the alcohol problem. My alcoholism was the most tangible experience and the most painful experience of the wisdom of life, that I'm not in control, actually, of much, if anything at all. Shocker, surprise, sorry. But like that's pretty incredible because life is so precious and it's so short. And I don't know where 17 years went, and I can't believe I'm 44 and I'm not that 27-year-old living on a top bunk of a sober house, completely lost, having no idea, and completely doubting that I could have a relationship with a God. Here's another little story I want to share. I went to college for 6 years full time because I kept changing my mind. And you can see on my transcript, like a really bad time of active alcoholism, and then me trying to like control it. Maybe I got a new boyfriend, got distracted with a job and some travel. So I would have like really bad grades, really good grades, honors list, all failed classes. So 6 years later, full-time college, I'm like, I graduated with a philosophy degree, and my thesis that gave me my degree was proof that there's no God. I mean, that's funny. That is so funny. It's like the most important relationship of my life. Oh my God, I was so out to lunch. I was so delusional. Look at what I can do. This is what my mind can do. It will try to convince the whole world. The whole world. This is a published thesis, by the way, guys. It's on record. It's filed away in my college. Me trying to prove that there's no God, just completely disregarding all of those moments of mystery and awe I had even as a kid, and completely disregarding a religious experience I had when I was like 11 or 12 years old. But I had no one to validate it for me. So I never shared that. But it was like Easter time, and I watched this movie about Jesus for the first time in my life. I didn't grow up in a religious household, and I watched this, and like 3 hours later, I was crying for 3 days. My heart was open wide, like I wanted to save the world, and I wanted to become a nun. So something got downloaded, something touched me, touched my heart, it opened my heart. But I'm 11 years old and I have no one to validate this experience for me. And I like, the corner block gave me a cigarette and then somebody handed me a bag of glue to huff and like all bets were off. I had a different calling. Suddenly. It's amazing. What a journey. I wouldn't take any of it out. Even the most painful things. Even the most painful things. And what an opportunity to heal as a result of doing the work of the 12 steps, given the courage to really make amends and to face ourselves and to heal parts of ourselves we didn't even know were so wounded and just need love. For me today, the relationship with God is the most important. What do I say when I mean God? For me, it very much corresponds to truth and love. Truth is a power greater than myself. Love is a power greater than myself. We can call it a creative intelligence, spirit of the universe, all anything we want, but it appears to me to be uh, only present in the here and now. And it just gives me just what I need to see the truth and come from love in the here and now. And that in turn makes a very fulfilling, rich life where even though the book says we need to be of service, I am moved to be of service. And I don't even know why half the time, but I'm just moved. It's more natural to be of service and to think of others than not. And as a result, the byproduct is all those things that that girl in her past life wanted. Deep friendships, deep connections, a sense of love, a fulfilled heart, all of those things that I initially chased the wrong way through manipulation and pretending and trying to control outcomes and trying to manage my own life on self-reliance from fear. They come as a result of just making myself available and valuing truth and love, which seems to be a more natural way for me to be, which is why God's will and my will align. I'm actually not in as much pain. I don't wake up with impending doom. I'm willing to face my fear because the trust I have is greater than the fear I have, even of the things I'm not clear about, not sure about. I'm willing to make amends that petrify me because I want to be true to that. I'm not being true to the person, I'm being true to that. I'm motivated, I'm moved by the integrity or by the principle rather than that. And along the lines, I get to make a million mistakes and be absolutely human. And sometimes I'm aware of them and sometimes I'm not. But the moment I'm aware of them, I have an opportunity and a toolbox to see what they teach me and how they change me and how they help me surrender more voluntarily to life. Today, it's been a practice of being more and more surrendered to whatever is in front of me and not arguing with it. Because my fourth step was an argument with life. Today, like I miss my dad and he's gone and he died young and I wish we had more time, but I trust that it couldn't have been any other way. I no longer argue with reality. That doesn't mean I don't have likes and preferences, and that doesn't mean that I can't get in touch with my missing of him because that's an expression of love. Me missing him is an expression of love. Me making an argument out of it is my righteousness and fear. And it's just really differentiating between the two and how I can, show up in the most honest way each day to the best of my ability and be okay that I fail at it all the time. Because I think that this program and my relationship with my God is very much based on my sincerity. The prayers are not so much to be on my knees. The prayer is to be on my knees in my heart. And so as a human being, I make a ton of mistakes. I get delusional. I take detours. I forget. And then something brings me back home as long as my heart is open. AA taught me that. AA. It's like, who would want to drink when you get all this stuff? This is juicy. This is juicy. Like, I'm 17 years sober. I sat with a woman yesterday reading the big book and I see something new because I have an experience of it I haven't had before. It's like a book that keeps on giving. It's timeless. It's speaking wisdom. It's a way of life. And if I am having this way of life, then I won't need to get loaded. I don't need to run away. I don't need to escape. I don't need relief from self because self is no longer in charge. I don't live a self-dominated life, right? I want to come from the neck down. How does this feel rather than what I think about it? How does this feel rather than what I think about it? Can I try that, trust that God consciousness? Can I trust that sixth sense that's being developed? Why? Because I cleaned up my house. I owned my stuff. I was resentful. I was bitter, selfish, self-centered, fear-driven, manipulative, intolerant, impatient, and all of those things still exist in me when I live a thought-dominated life. But when I live a spirit-filled life, and when I'm moved by the heart, or when I'm moved by the truth, or by gratitude, by humility, it just everything seems like a gift. Then we travel lighter through life. That's been my experience so far. And here's another truth. I have no idea if it's going to be like this a year from now. I might be completely delusional or lost or drunk. And so it makes it precious. That makes it so much more precious. Thanks.